Marijuana was a plant that the US relied on heavily in the past. However, somewhere along the way, people started to believe that marijuana causes health problems rather than solving them, and the industry it has to offer wasn't worth investing in. Of course, recently it is becoming common knowledge that marijuana has medicinal properties and that it can be a very valuable cash crop as well. So if we know this today, what happened in the past? How did this plant become illegal, and how are such wild rumors believed to be true? Well, it all started in the early 1900s. Excuse me. At this time, marijuana in the US was known as hemp for industrial purposes and cannabis for medicinal purposes. People really weren't smoking it for pleasure at this time. It was not used for recreational purposes. But in 1910 to 1920, the Mexican Revolution was ongoing, and this was causing an increase in immigrants entering the US. However, these immigrants also brought with them marijuana. Now, not only did they bring the drug with them, but they brought their sense of culture with them as well, meaning that they brought the name marijuana to the US, as well as the idea that it could be smoked for pleasure instead of using it for just medicinal and industrial purposes. Now, since the immigrants called it something else and they used it for another purpose, no one really knew that marijuana was the same as hemp and cannabis. This made it possible to believe all sorts of things about marijuana, since apparently it was a whole new drug. But at this time, the US used marijuana as a means to control the rising number of immigrants in the country. Since the two were directly related at the time, claiming that marijuana sparked violent tendencies and reckless behavior gave the US an excuse to use marijuana as a way of finding immigrants, using marijuana as an excuse to stop someone of Mexican heritage to find out if they were actually an American citizen or not. Now, these claims worked really well. People actually believed the outrageous claims that were often centered around race, and so much that 29 states between 1916 and 1931 actually outlawed marijuana altogether. Now, at this point in history, there were three people who would greatly benefit from marijuana becoming illegal. One being DuPont, owner of the DuPont Company, who produced products using lumber. Hearst, the owner of the most popular newspaper at the time. And Anslinger, head of the new Bureau of Narcotics and Dangerous Drugs. Though how much they actually contributed to marijuana becoming illegal is somewhat unknown. However, you cannot deny the influence that Hearst had with his newspaper and the power that Anslinger had through his position, and the potential bankruptcy that DuPont would face if marijuana was used to create products, since 80% of his products wouldn't be made because marijuana would simply replace them. Now, Hearst had invested millions into purchasing woodlands and investing in machines that make lumber into paper, which was DuPont's business. And DuPont also wanted to see his business thrive, of course, and was afraid, as I mentioned before, marijuana would be a huge competitor. So, of course, these two had no legal power. However, Hearst newspaper was influencing America with yellow journalism, that convincing them that marijuana is actually dangerous, and with Anslinger being afraid of losing his job with the Great Depression greatly impacting the economy and alcohol being legalized, he was worried that his department would be shut down simply because they would only be going after people using cocaine and heroin and those drugs specifically, and he simply did not think that maybe would warrant enough of a reason to keep his department ongoing. So he pushed for the Marijuana Tax Act in 1937, essentially crippling the hemp industry as well as banning marijuana altogether. So it could be thought that Anslinger used her influence to help pass the bill that benefited them all. However, as I said before, there is no real definitive proof that these were their motives. Some believe that there was an entirely different reason behind marijuana becoming illegal, and that connects more to what I was talking about in the beginning, that when marijuana was connected to Mexican immigrants, connecting marijuana to races that were mistreated throughout history, people were quick to outlaw this plant due to their simple misguided feelings about these races. So, what do you think? Do you think marijuana becoming illegal was a byproduct of racism, or did a few powerful and influential people have a lot to gain and simply made the change? I think the saddest part is they're both very believable and at the same time can both be true. I would love to hear your comments. Thank you very much for your time.